You're welcome back. This show is coming to you live from Kokomlemle. This is the Multi-TV studios, and this is your Joy News channel. It is live on Joy 99.7 FM, on Love FM in Kumasi, and over a dozen affiliate radio stations across the country. It is also live at myjoyonline.com, multi-TV world /streams, and subsequently available on the ABN's Sky Channel 260. And you're welcome your views and comments. 1422, that's a text line, 1422. You can also post your comments on our Facebook wall, or alternatively send them to Newsfile at myjoyonline.com. The show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, Star Travel Policy and Star Assurance. They are your solid partner. They are your CIMG Insurance Company of the Year 2012. MTN, welcome to the new world. And everywhere you go, you find MTN. ZipNet Internet, that's simply reliable. It's your best residential internet facility. Falcon Properties, they want you to own a piece of the earth. Thank you very, very much. My guest already seated. Abdul Malik Kubako Jr. is editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper and is a regular panelist on the show. The man who always comes with a bag load of documents. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, my brother.
Right. And we also have here in the studio Frederick Opariansa. He is MPP Member of Parliament for Suhum. Good morning and welcome to the show, sir.
Good morning and thank you.
Great. Felix Kwachi Ofosu is Deputy Minister of Communications. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Samson.
Great. And we will be joined by John Abdullahi Jinapo, is Deputy Minister of Energy and Petroleum. He's already here in the house. As always, your views and comments are welcome. Now, you already know that in the course of this week, one subject has dominated the front pages and also has been on the front pages of your mind as well. I'm talking about the gun-wielding, machete-wielding supporters of the NPP, or whoever they are, who found themselves at the offices, the headquarters of the NPP, and disrupted a press conference that was being addressed by Kwabena Ejapong, who is the General Secretary, and Paul Afoko, who is the Chairman of the NPP. It's brought in its wake a lot of issues. The former President, Kufuor, has pleaded for calm. He says the party is not known for thuggery, it's known for exchange of ideas. Nana Addo has also come into it and pleaded for calm. Alan Shramanting, who is also one of the front runners for the flag bearership, has also pleaded for calm. And now, just when you thought that everything was calming down after the elders had met and called for a ceasefire, a lot of things have come up. You've heard Atta Kobina Kennedy, a former aspirant and communications director for Nana Addo. Well, he feels and suspects that Nana Addo may have been behind the thuggery and the gun-wielding, machete-wielding young men who went to the party's offices. Well, just yesterday, we're told that an election has gone on in London, and the outcome is that Nana Addo has a landslide, and most of the other contestants have just lost out. That also is being contested, muddying the waters. These are the issues to look at. Now, let's take a sneak peek into some of the things that happened at the party headquarters. Welcome, John Abdullahi Jinapo.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Right, so let's just watch a few of the things that happened. We'll come back and my guest will do justice to the matters for discussion.
Have you come there? I'm telling you.
right, for those of you who do not have the benefit of the television, we're seeing a group of people, you know, fighting at the NPP's headquarters. Of course, they are throwing blows, and you have Paul Afoko in the middle trying to separate them. You have some other people who are also attempting to separate them. And Paul Afoko throwing his hands in the air in despair or shouting, you know, obviously disappointed at the situation. I'm sure those of you who are listening on radio may have seen this footage somewhere, or it's even still available on YouTube. You can also just go to my Joe Online and look at it. It's just telling you in pictures what happened at the NPP's headquarters. All right, so those who are being separated, some of them don't seem to understand. They don't want to really give in. You have the NPP's own private security who are there helping this young man who, you know, is topless and is down on the ground. I don't know what exactly happened to him. You cannot see anything that must have happened to him. All right, so that was the NPP's headquarters and what happened in the course of the week. We'll start the discussion right from there. Fred, terrible. Terrible, terrible. And many Ghanaians are saying they are disappointed in the only possible alternative government. That a party in crisis is not the solution to a nation in crisis. Good morning, Niyama Akonfra.
Good morning. I do share that view, that indeed what we just saw does not depict the kind of alternative that Ghanaians are seeking. And that is why we have to begin to do everything possible to restore the confidence that Ghanaians have in our party. Over the past couple of days, I'm sure you've heard me calling on all the feuding groups within the party to cease fire. It is precisely because if we ourselves are not seen as united, how can we purport to come into office come 2017 and unite the country? This is a political party which is supposed to have a common principle, a common vision, and then if this is the way we choose to settle our internal differences, then how are we going to settle differences that will certainly arise between us and the currently ruling NDC when they are in opposition come 2017? It is clearly not a good sign for the people to see and to appreciate that they have a viable alternative. And that is why I have taken it upon myself to make this call to all party members. The issue in question, which is the issue, as you have stated here, that the chairman and the general secretary are being accused of arbitrariness and flouting party rules. First of all, my position has been that we try as much as possible to stay away from taking sides in these discussions. That does not mean that I do not have.
We'll get there. We'll get there, but we need to deal with the issues first.
Oh yes, yes.
People are surprised.
Yes.
That a mere request from the party's chief executive, so to speak, to one of its acting, deputy communication director, is it? He was a deputy communications director acting at the same time, Perry Okujeto.
Yeah.
This letter, under the hand of Kwabena Ejapong, General Secretary of the NPP, and copied to the National Chairman and the Acting Director of Finance and Administration. The letter was authored on the 13th of August 2014 and is addressed to Mr. Perry Okujeto, Acting Deputy Director, Communications, New Patriotic Party, Accra. It says, "Dear Sir, annual vacation leave. Please be informed that you have been granted 2 years accumulated leave. You have accumulated leave for 4 years. However, we are able to grant you 2 years leave. This translates into 40 working days. Is that it? Your leave will take effect from Monday, the 13th of August, 2014. You are required to prepare your handing over notes and submit to the Acting Director of Finance and Administration. Kindly complete the process by Friday, the 15th of August, 2014. You're also to leave your contact details to facilitate contact with headquarters while you are on leave. Yours faithfully, Kobna Eje Ejapong. How could this culminate in guns and machetes at the party headquarters?
I was just leading to this, and if you permit me, just to finish my general statement that I was making, that my preference would have been that at this point, all party members, well-meaning party faithfuls, would desist from delving as deep as they have into these issues publicly and allow the national officers of the party as well as the Council of Elders who have stepped in to try as much as possible to resolve these issues. But clearly, political parties are made up of various interest groups. And so, as we have always been told, anytime you see any issue that you seemingly do not understand why it could result in what you are seeing, there are clearly some antecedents and undertones. There could be some remote causes, and this is just what, as they call it, the last straw that broke the camel's back. I am sure the party has gone through a lot whilst being in opposition. I am sure various groups, various persons may have not been happy with certain things in the party, and it found its expression in the series of incidents that we have seen since this letter became public. Truly, if your General Secretary writes this letter, I personally do not see why it should result in what we saw. There are several mechanisms in the party for seeking remedy if you disagree with the path that the General Secretary had taken. Our constitution, the constitution of the New Patriotic Party, is not by itself, let's say, a sacrosanct document. I am sure if you take it to constitutional lawyers, if you take it to any two lawyers for that matter, they will be able to find things to argue about. Is an engineer like myself. I don't think Paul Afoko is a lawyer. Yes, they do. Yeah, they do have a legal team, but we should also understand that on the day-to-day operations of the party or any organization for that matter, people will have to take decisions. Here at Multimedia, I'm sure you have a board, and then you have management, you have a CEO. It is true that the CEO will have to take decisions subject to the direction and guidance of the board. But clearly also, on an instantaneous basis, on a day-to-day basis, there are several decisions that will have to be taken by these persons. And they will do so, and certainly at the appropriate sitting of the board, go back to report to them. If the board feels that those decisions they took were not right, there is always a way to remedy those decisions. And that is why I thought that if Kwabena Japan writes to his Deputy Director of Communications to proceed on leave, and he's not happy about it, a lot of people have questioned how this document got into the public domain. But then again, if somebody is not happy about something, you can also not determine how they will react.
What's your understanding of your own constitution? The allegation is that he ought to have consulted all the General Secretary and the Chairman ought to have received the mandate from the National Executive Committee, which they didn't have. They say, look, they were right in taking the decision that they took. And even though you may have a meeting like you suggest, that meeting will not go to the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day administrative matters.
Every organization has a lot of precedents because it's almost like a continuum. So how previous administrations have executed some of the mandates that the current executive holds is also something that guides those that are there now to determine how they act. The Constitution is not a sudden occurrence. It didn't just happen today. It's been there for a while. We've had several general secretaries, we have had several chairpersons, and they have all gone to the tenets of this Constitution. How did they go through these things? The previous persons who appointed these same officers we are talking about today, is there any record that their appointment was sanctioned by the National Executive Committee or Steering Committee for that matter? I do not know. But if you look clearly at our Constitution, it talks about those who are members of the National Secretariat. You will realize that under the Secretariat, you would have directorates. And within these directorates also, you have persons that you need to hire into the directorates. That is where the ambiguities set in. Go to a ministry, you have 2 deputy ministers here. They have directors within their organizations, whereas their own appointments require the prior approval of Parliament before the President can say he has appointed them. Can you say the same of the persons who work in their ministries? They are the political heads. If you stretch this argument, then of course, if it is said in the party's constitution that the heads of these directorates, being the directors, are part of the National Secretariat, because don't forget, these ministers are also part of the cabinet. But it is not the same for the civil servants. You can't say they are members of cabinet, although they work up to people who are in cabinet. That is one side of the argument. Another side is also that when the president seeks to appoint a minister, he comes to Parliament for prior approval. Does he come back to Parliament when he needs to remove the same minister?
Just hold on briefly there for me. Let me go to Abdul Malik Kwekubako Jr. He's holding the NPP's constitution, and I'm sure he will assist us to get directly into the issues as to whether or not the actions that the Cabinet Japan and, as it were, Afoko took were right or not, and what subsequently followed. Kweku.
Well, I'm not too sure if well, let's deal with it. First and foremost, because the question you've posed prevents me from doing an introductory.
Koku, this is the way you do it. Do the introduction, and then let's move to
because I think that what is important is that the incident of violence that we saw, they ought to be condemned outright. That is important. It just doesn't make sense that violence was applied in dealing with whatever mischief there was. And it also more or less led to a certain conclusion for me of leadership failure and collateral damage to the collective integrity of the party we are talking about, at least to some extent. So I wanted to make this point very clear.
Right.
And I'm not surprised that the Council of Elders has subsequently come in to ask for ceasefire and all those things. That is indicative of the fact that all what happened was negative and ought to be put in that perspective. Now you've raised a specific issue, being that whether the General Secretary and Chairman
were
justified in relative to the proceed on lifting. First of all, I've heard the General Secretary defend that action and other related actions.
Right.
And he does so by going to the party's constitution, which is on page 47, where I think it's the one that talks about General Secretary. And it says the party shall have a National Secretariat, which shall be headed by the General Secretary, who shall be a full-time employee of the party. The General Secretary shall be assisted by 2 deputy general secretaries who shall be appointed by the National Executive Committee in consultation with the National Council. Then this is where the General Secretary appears to lay his emphasis. He says the National Secretariat shall consist of the General Secretary, the National Organizer, the Director of Finance, the Director of Communications, the Director of Campaign Strategy, and such other personnel as the National Executive Committee may appoint. This is the flashpoint when I listen to all of them. They, of course, add the General Secretary shall be responsible for overseeing the operations of the party's National Secretariat and coordinating the activities and operations of the party and of all employees of the party at the constituency, regional, external, and national affairs. Now let's come to the 2. The General Secretary, if I listen to him carefully, is suggesting that the letter and spirit of these 2 excludes deputies to the substantive positions here. So, for instance, Director of Communications, it is indicated that such other personnel as the National Executive Committee may appoint. His interpretation is that it doesn't include deputies of these substantive officers. You get the point?
Yes.
That's what he's arguing. The others are arguing that no, such other personnel as the National Executive Committee may appoint to be part of National Secretariat must necessarily include deputies to those who hold the substantive positions. So there's a conflict of interpretation. Now, if there is, this same constitution has provision for constitutional and legal committee of the party. I would have expected that both sides, but even more so the top leaders, the chairman and the general secretary in this case, if there was that conflict, in a responsible manner, to send this particular conflict of interpretation to the appropriate committee of the party for it to be resolved. If they can't do that, then of course you go beyond the party to the appropriate forum, which we all know, because the party is a public body anyway. It's a public entity.
Just hold on briefly. John has an intervention you want to make quickly.
What is the issue with this in terms of the problems that they are having?
Are you asking me questions?
No,
I thought
that
the
you were referring
that
that was creating a problem, and it ought to be referred to the legal committee.
Right.
And so my question was that how does this create a problem for them?
No, we'll deal with that. That's a different...
I'm surprised at my brother's intervention.
Well,
I am really surprised.
no, I thought that we should be on the same wave. Maybe I don't get it.
No, you don't have to
but
get on the same drift with me.
No
You have to
problem.
wait
Let's
for the host to come to you, and then you can make an intervention.
but we
It's okay,
sometimes
proceed.
do
That's okay.
Yes.
That's okay.
Seems to be some remote causes.
No. We are
No, I
damn
just wanted
very,
to get
very
a
good
drift.
friends.
I wanted to get a drift.
We are very
but,
good
well,
friends, and somebody I admire anyway. So I respect him.
And
He's a
you
deputy
go.
minister, so please, no hard feelings at all. Yeah, but the point I'm making that there's this apparent, and I have my own opinion as to what it should be, but we are trying here to put it out first in an objective manner. This is the conflict of interpretation. I'm saying that this constitution provides a certain cure for that perceived mischief within their internal framework. If you don't succeed with that, then of course others have options to go beyond the party framework. But I'm saying that at this stage, this was not subjected to that internal mechanism. Of course, because what had happened was the public stance both sides took. For instance, when that was done, executive members, that's members of the National Executive Committee, Freddie Blair and the rest, went on air to complain. In fact, that
they were not aware.
Yes, that they were not aware. We are told it was discussed. For me, discussion is not synonymous with agreement. We could discuss something, and it could be at a certain stage. We may not have come to a consensus. So discussion is not synonymous with agreement, and neither is it an approval. So that really is not a big deal. But the point really is that, and don't forget, the victim, quote unquote, Perry also spoke when Asampa called him. Once the thing had become public, it became an issue. The General Secretary and the Chairman decided to cure that mischief, including others, by also going public to hold a press conference, which was also inappropriate in terms of curing the mischief.
They are being bashed all over.
They are the leaders. In their contest, it's even worse. Both sides aired going on air. But I am telling you that and look at what the Council of Elders did. What does it mean? It vindicates the point I'm making. That going public to seek to cure that mischief was inappropriate. And I'm being charitable by using the word inappropriate. All they had to do, knowing that you are leaders, the top leaders, if indeed other executive members had erred by going on air, which indeed was also irresponsible in my candid opinion, what you do is either you call the steering committee meeting, which they had been demanding, or you go beyond them by putting a paper before the National Executive Committee or the National Council. Eventually, it was the National Council that had to sit, showing that it was a possibility, it was always there, that another higher organ of the party could have the remit to deal with the issues that were unfolding.
Koko, don't forget that Kwabena Japan thinks that the whole, and I'm quoting him, the whole party has been organized against me.
No, I didn't think, I thought I heard he was talking party communications. I'm not sure he was talking of the whole party. I mean, to be precise.
Those are his words.
No,
the
I'm
whole
sure
party has been organized against me.
No, I think it's a misrepresentation. He was talking of party communications.
But just
that's what I heard.
On the point.
Yes.
The body that sat is not the National Council.
Which one?
It is the National Council of Elders.
Yes. In fact, I'm sorry. That's what I meant. No. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
the National Council of Elders. But it shows that it is an organ that was available to have been called upon to cure. Council of Elders
plays an advisory role.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a superior body.
No.
Yes.
But
the National Council is a superior body to the steering committee.
Conceded. But that was the body I was referring to.
Yes,
the National Council
so
of
at the
Elders.
point, your point suggested that the body that met was a superior body.
No. Correction. I accept the correction.
Right. Okay.
The key point being that body,
there was a key
which was made up of elders, who people respect,
Yeah.
the party rank and file and leaders respect.
Yeah.
In fact, the cure they've brought out is being respected by almost all of them. That shows their level of influence. It's an influential organ of the party that had not become defunct. That was there and that could have been activated to handle the issues that confronted the General Secretary and the Chairman. For the General Secretary and the Chairman to also decide that, look, we will cure the mischief, the perceived mischief, by also going public. It only created a certain fatal situation for the party. It was a fatal miscalculation on their part, just the same way those who had earlier gone on air to try and cure the same mischief. That is leadership failure, collective responsibility. You can then segment as to who takes a bigger stake of the blame. That is the way it is, to be very blunt.
Thank you, Keko. I'll come back. Now, Felix, granted that they made a mistake by choosing a press conference to calling on the highest body or asking for an interpretation of the Constitution. That certainly does not warrant guns and machetes.
Well, let me say that the deep crisis that the NPP finds itself in at the moment is a direct result, in my view, of dysfunctional and sometimes incompetent leadership. There's no way, no reason why a relatively minor administrative decision like this one should have elicited a sort of conflagration or imbroglio that we witnessed. Absolutely no justification can be provided for that kind of conduct. But again, we would be delusional if we pretended that the reason why the violence erupted was because of this administrative decision to ask Perio Kujeto to proceed on some leave. There are much bigger problems. There is division in that party along the lines of candidates who want to lead the party into the 2016 elections, and we cannot run away from that. If you want to test that, just examine the personalities who are condemning the Polafoko Kwabena Japan axis, and also examine those who are backing Polafoko and Kwabena Japan. You'll find that these are people who are on one side of the leadership divide or the other. All those condemning Kwabena Japan and Polafoko are known Nana Akufo-Addo supporters. All those defending Polafoko and Kwabena Japan are known Alan Chimantin supporters. Indeed, these divisions have existed since 2007, when Mr. Alan Chimantin emerged as a claimant, or if you like, a contender for the flag bearership slot of the NPP. You recall that at the Legon Congress to elect a flag bearer, there was some violence. Mr. Foko was attacked after having been accused of trying to influence delegates with money. Since then, there have been accusations and counter-accusations. In fact, in the run-up to the Tamale conference, where they elected their new national executive, we all witnessed the acrimonious exchanges that characterized the campaigning towards that Congress. How Mr. Afoko and Kwabena Japan were vilified by known Nana Addo elements. Of course, they also responded in like measure. After they were elected, if you watched the body language of Mr. Afoko and Mr. Japan, it was as though a new king had breached into town. And so everything ought to be done to, if you like, curtail Nana Addo's effort to position himself as the de facto leader of the NPP. You realize that there was a certain mobilization. You had party executive who, by convention and perhaps by NPP constitution and legal arrangements, were not supposed to be publicly endorsing a candidate, trooping in on a daily basis to express support for Nana Addo. Mr. Lanchemantin's faction viewed that as an existential threat, and so it had to be countered. So they felt that perhaps once they had secured the chairmanship and general secretary slot, they were in a position to counter that. And since then, that party has not known peace. The violence that erupted last Tuesday was perhaps the most serious incident yet. But if you recall, a couple of weeks or months ago, there was a similar confrontation when an effort was made to move from one security arrangement to another. Before then, there had been some spats here and there at various meetings, and the language had turned darker and darker and more acrimonious anytime that issues about the NPP came up for discussion. That is why I describe it as the result of a dysfunctional leadership and in some instances incompetent leadership at all levels of the party. The National Council, the National Council of Elders, and all the other organs cannot escape blame, because if you examine the personalities who compose these organs carefully, you find that they are also aligned. Why? It is an open secret that President Kufuor had Mr. Lanchemanti as a protege, and indeed at some point even Nana Akufo-Addo himself alleged that President Kufuor used his position as president to back Mr. Lanchemanti. That division has remained. Yes, there was an interview that Nana Addo granted to City FM in 2007 in which he alleged executive complicity. We will pull it out. We will pull it out when the time comes. It is not in dispute. He alleged, he alleged that there was executive complicity in the effort to make.
You were specific.
Yeah, he was.
That
he was.
President Kufuor.
Of course, but who was the executive at the time? He didn't mention it.
But the executive complicity.
Not executive of. Not executive.
Government. District executive.
Government executive. Yes, but even then that was.
So be careful in using the we are talking about this debate.
There's no dispute what he was referring to. We all know that even the old executive, the Jacobeche Blante, Sir John executive, also openly associated or aligned with Nana Akufo-Addo. When Nana Addo launched his campaign recently, you saw how parliamentarians trooped to Manchagona to declare support for him and insist that they were going to be at the forefront of his campaign. These things angered supporters of Lanchemanti. So it was always going to be possible to have the sort of conflagration that we have had. Now, this thing also did not happen in isolation. The warning signs were there. The writing was on the wall that we were going to arrive at this stage. The reason why I fault all organs of the party is that nobody appeared to have been able to stand up when it mattered most to insist that they ought to do the right thing and desist from that kind of behavior. The Council of Elders could not have pretended that they were unaware of these simmering tensions. Indeed, in one of the letters written by, if you like, a faction of the current national executive, the one in which Mr. Freddie Blay, Samuel Oku, Mr. C.K. Tedam, if I'm not mistaken, he's a member of the Council of Elders. He took a position against the Paul Afoko Kwabena Japan executive. And so there's no way that they can escape blame for what has happened. What they have done is to seriously undermine their credibility as a viable alternative to the National Democratic Congress. Because indeed, something, ask yourself, today, if elections were held, are you confident that people will go out there and vote for a party that is in tatters at the moment? A party that is not able to handle very basic, minor administrative tasks like changing security arrangements at the headquarters, or even asking officers to proceed on leave, or asking them to stay on board, or making changes to some directorship positions in the party.
It doesn't matter that that party has a track record.
No, it doesn't matter.
Track record.
No, you see, that track record was voted upon in 2008. If the track record was impressive, as far as Ghanaian voters were concerned, they would have been retained. So that has been voted on. What Ghanaians will look out for now is what new they have in store for them. But if they cannot manage their own affairs, relatively minor task, how can they be trusted to manage more complex problems regarding the affairs of the nation. So there's no dispute that they seriously undermine their credibility in the eyes of right-thinking Ghanaians.
And you feel sincerely that this is going to be a major consideration for voters when they go to the polls.
You see, I am confident that the NDC will emerge victorious. Perhaps it is early in the day to be discussing this, based on what
I asked the question
do.
directly because you said if elections were held today.
No, what we are doing and what we, of course we have 2 years to go, so we will do more. And I'm sure we will come to the second leg of today's program when we discuss Commander and other things. There's evidence of, well, indeed, at the time that the NPP they were fighting themselves at their headquarters. President Mahama was cutting the saw for the construction of the Commander Sugar Factory. So it provided a certain contrast in terms of what both parties have in store. And therefore, let them not underestimate the damage that they have done to themselves. It is bad enough to go on air and attack each other, but it is even worse when there are visuals of people holding machetes and guns and attacking other people who were just holding a press conference. I agree with Kweku when he criticizes the way that Mr. Polafoko and Kwame Japan approach this matter. Whereas you can condemn Mr. Freddie Blay and the others for prematurely going on air to discuss this particular incident involving Mr. Pelokujeto. I think Mr. Foko and Kwame Japan bear greater responsibility. They should never have gone public on the same matter. Because at a time when your other colleagues...
You just said a while ago that they have been sort of consistently undermined.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
And you don't want them at a point to be able to come public and to stick, you know, a claim to the mandate that has been given to them, to insist that we have the mandate to run the party and we ought to be allowed to do so.
Their mandate was conferred on them by Congress. So it is not in dispute. Indeed, nobody can remove them until certain laid-down processes are followed. The fact that you have been attacked is no reason why you also go public.
Okay.
Especially when you had colleague executive members writing to you expressing reservations about a particular decision. What they should have done, in my view, was to convene a meeting or make overtures to those who were complaining and explain their position to them. If after that, agreement is not reached, you can then escalate it and go to higher.
We do not know for a fact if they did or did not make overtures.
It does not appear that this was done in this current situation.
Do you think nothing of the sort was done?
Oh, they did. But they did what? If you call meeting,
was a meeting convened?
Did you call a meeting and people didn't attend? And if you did, and they wouldn't come to discuss the issues, there's a higher body to refer the matter to. Call the higher body, the National Executive Committee. This is so clear.
Just hold on. Let me hear John on this. Let me hear John on this. And you know, when Felix was referring to the fact that this is obviously a point that people will consider, particularly floating voters, and I'm sure that somebody else has mentioned it. Atta Kennedy has mentioned it. That if that is what you think. I saw whilst he was saying that, and you were nodding, Kuku was pulling up some documents. Of course, he'll be reading to you what the NDC had to go through, and yet that was not used to punish them as far as its own internal problems were concerned. So you are of the view that these internal problems certainly should not have come to this point.
Absolutely.
But how else did you expect Japan and Co. to deal with the matter?
You're talking of Canada, Japan?
Yeah.
No, Japan.
Okay. Well, let me just greet our viewers and wish them well on a weekend. First of all, I was quite surprised. Indeed, I was shocked. The level of violence, mayhem, and bloodbath that we witnessed at the NPP headquarters.
So what? Violence, mayhem and bloodbath?
I mean, there was bloodbath. You just saw it. I mean, people were being kicked left, right, and
center. On the footage, we didn't see blood.
I certainly saw it.
We didn't even see the guns.
And as you rightly put it, machetes and guns. I mean, you can't believe it. I said, as he rightly put it.
But I saw machetes.
I'm only alluding to his statement that machetes and guns were at display. I mean, please, you know, these are serious matters. This is serious. We can talk about something not inherent to this party's benefit. This party is not organized. But when political party activity takes a certain turn to the level where guns are being pulled out, machetes, bow and arrows, cudgels and all those. I mean, it's quite worrying, and I feel very sad. You know, it's worrying. Let's be very fair. Let's be very objective. It's quite worrying.
Yes, it will be factual.
And so, just as you condemned it, I want to associate myself with Abdul Malik in condemning that heinous activity that took place. But beyond condemnation, the issue of prosecution ought to come in.
Investigation.
You see, people cannot just behave with impunity and expect to go scot-free. If it's NDC, let's condemn it. If it's NPP, let's condemn it. Because I am told that on that unfaithful day, I don't call it faithful day, people could not conduct business.
You don't call it?
I don't call it a faithful day. It's an unfaithful day. People could not conduct business on that stretch. You have your internal party matters, deal with it internally. Don't hold ordinary, innocent Ghanaians to hostage and to ransom. But you know, in another vein, I'm not surprised. And Felix rightly put it. Let's not pretend there is deep-seated division in the NPP.
Which inures to the benefit of the NDC.
Not necessarily. You see, we want to face the NPP.
You actually pray for it.
You see, we want to face the NPP strong and united. And on our own record, we will beat them hands down. We beat them when they were in power. President Mills beat Nana Addo. There was a second round, he beat him. President Mama beat him outright.
He wasn't a president anyway.
That's a fact. No, I'm stating a factual precedent. That look, President Mills beat Nana Addo when they were in power.
You are saying, you are insisting that there ought to be some investigation and prosecution.
Yes, because people cannot just take the law into their own hands. First of all, were those guns licensed? What sort of guns were they using? Because some guns can simply not be licensed.
Confirm for
if you are
fact
using Kalashnikovs,
guns were used.
If you are using Uzis, if you are using bazookas, they cannot be licensed. If they were single barrels, yes, they shouldn't have displayed them, but you could have gotten licenses for them. But Uzis, bazookas, Kalashnikovs.
Were they on display?
No, I'm just as part of the investigation.
So no, needless speculation.
We want to broaden.
Well,
just proceed.
Well, given the fact that the guns would have to be passed.
Broaden the investigation.
I don't blame you.
And get all the
I don't blame you.
Because we must get to the bottom of this matter. Beyond that, I'm hearing, and Communist Japan rightly or wrongly stated that those were higher tax. And so beyond the tax, who are those behind them? Yeah. And he was categorical. He said leading members of the party. Leading members of the party.
So what, you agree with Arthur Kennedy when he says that Nana Addo is behind them? He believes Nana Addo is behind them.
I would not agree with Arthur Kennedy or not. I mean, it's an issue for them. I'm only worried at the level of mayhem and violence. But you know, as I said, there's deep-seated division in the NPP. And you can't pretend. Look, all of us can try to be glossy, we can try to paint a very good picture and pretend as if nothing has happened. But amongst us, we know that there's division in the NPP. It's a fact. And I heard Beneftion. He says that, yes, you can have factionalism. Sometimes, depending on how you manage that factionalism, it can even be productive. But when it degenerates into what we are seeing today, it hurts the party. And that is a fact. I think that the party ought to be bold and fair. I'm happy that the National Council of Elders stepped in. But they should have done that right from the beginning.
Absolutely.
When Freddie Blair and co went on air, you nip it in the bud. You ought to be proactive. I can understand Kwesi's point that, look, maybe Kobina Japan shouldn't have done that. But if I were in his shoes, every day I'm being vilified. Every day I'm being bad-mouthed. Every day I'm being accused of doing that. I mean, it was getting to a point where, look, and he said it on air, that he's had cause to complain to some of these elders. It's not all the time that you ought to be having meetings.
Well, at one point, he was accused of being an NDC mole in the NPP.
No, that he was on our payroll. Not just an NDC mole. That Kobina Japan and Paul Afoko were on our payroll.
And you cured that with a press conference?
I am not saying I'm directing my frustration at the National Council of Elders.
That is impossible?
That
at least within the Ghanaian context of our
not
politics.
with the NDC.
Well, of course, we understand.
Democratic and transparent party.
Why was Josiah, booted out for the NDC?
because he did not stick to our principles. We frown on those activities. So when we frown on those activities, we couldn't have been doing that.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
the
NDC believed then that it was possible.
No, but
it was possible.
Yeah, but these are allegations
that
that
a person of the stature of Josiah Aye, who was at the front of the party, could be bought by the NPP. But you don't believe that. I will deal with Josiah in a minute, but let me just deal with that. There's a lot of meat on this bone.
I will say it for now, he cannot be bought.
No, there's a lot of meat on this bone. Even if I can't finish the meat, let me scrape some of.
Why he felt it was necessary to clear the air.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat on this bone, and I really want to deal with that. You know, you're going for primaries. Nana Addo is not the candidate yet. Alan Chamantin is not the candidate yet. They are potential candidates for the NPP. Each and every one of them is trying to court the attention of the party. Legitimate. But the playing field is not fair. Yeah. It's a fact. Initially, the national chairman, Jacob,
who is making it unfair?
Various party officers.
The various factions in the party.
No, he's got his people who feel they want him and they are campaigning for him.
I'm addressing who is making it unfair.
So if there are other parties or other candidates, you know, whoever, aspirants, if they also feel, you know, they support their, they should go ahead and do the same for them.
Assuming without admitting that Abdul Malik was an ordinary member of the NPP, and he decides that I want to support Nana Addo, no deal. But when a chairman, a general secretary, says that, look, my main preoccupation is to make Nana Addo the
former
candidate.
general secretary.
No, at that time, I'm building a...
And we dealt with those
I'm building... And he says that even if Nana Addo is sick, they'll put him in a wheelbarrow and take him around for campaigning. It creates a problem. Yes, Sir John said that. He said that. It's a statement of fact. It's not an opinion.
Wheelbarrow?
Wheelbarrow.
No, wheelchair.
Whatever it is, I mean, they are all wheels. They are all wheels. I mean,
okay, so please finish up.
So right from that point, you see, and these things, honorable, you see, you ought to stop these things in their tracks.
Very interesting word.
That is very important. You see, what is happening, and you rightly put it, that the last straw that broke the camel's back, it means that things have been piling on the camel. The camel has been complaining, nobody listens. The camel complains, keep piling the problems until the camel's back is broken. And this is what has happened. So let's not sit here and pretend as if it's just the issue of going on leave, it's just the composition of a communication team that is creating the problem.
You decided to go there. The host asked a specific question.
No, I want to broaden the frontiers of this discussion. I think that if I may just use my
don't say we are pretending.
I know.
I said
let's not. It's not you. I mean, all of us. It refers to you. If I may use my last 5 minutes.
Just hold on at this point.
My last 5 minutes just to...
No, you don't have 5 minutes. You haven't been checking how long you have been talking. My friend, look at it this way. He raises an issue. We have heard Paula Foucault say, oh, we'll leave it. It's a small matter I want you to address, and then we'll move on. We'll leave it to, we'll take care of it, or we'll leave it to God. He's saying there ought to be investigations and prosecutions. Yeah. In this country, by criminal laws, the use of offensive weapons, when you use it to cause harm, is a first-degree felony. When you use it to threaten someone, threatening them to harm them, you are committing a misdemeanor. You ought to be punished. Why should that not be left to the police rather than say we'll deal with it as our own matter?
Thank you, but let me address a couple of issues and then I'll take that.
No, take this one first.
I will take that along.
Take this one
because
first.
It leads to it.
No, should that not be the party's concern?
It's what I'm saying leads
you don't have violence
what I'm saying leads
at your
to
place.
that. I think Kweku raised an issue about the fact that he thought there were other avenues for remedy, and he did make mention of the disciplinary committee. Just to go on record that at the time this incident started unfolding, there was no national disciplinary committee in place. That's the first point I wanted to make.
I just mentioned that's one of the options.
Yes, I'm just saying that particular body was not there.
Do you need a disciplinary committee to rein in elements?
Not really.
Again, I am also very certain that at the height of it, when Mr. Freddie Blay and co were on air, the national chairman did make calls to them, trying to get them to stop. I'm trying to be very careful here so that I do not.
You don't take sides in the matter.
I'm on a particular path here trying to bring unity.
Okay.
And that is why I've been speaking to this. In fact, the first time I saw what I would call an anti-MPP publication against the national chairman, there was some publication in front of the Daily Guide about a focal fraud and that sort of thing. I immediately called Mr. Blair and said, what am I seeing in front of the Daily Guide? The Daily Guide is not known as a paper that does these kinds of headlines. So what is happening? So I do talk to all these persons. So when I hear Mr. Freddie Blay also on air talking, I call the national chairman and ask him, I've called him, and so I know that he even tried to rein people in that way. So it is not as if these things happened and then suddenly people also decided to just go on air. But John made a very important point about the fact that when these things start, we don't have to sit and wait until it gets to this level before the National Council of Elders come in. When you have a regional chairman go on air and tell the country that the general secretary of the party is on the payroll of the opposition party that is in government, that is the point at which the National Council of Elders should have stepped in.
Or they could have been activated.
That's
by a complaint from the general secretary.
I am not holding brief for anybody, but I am saying that so many things have gone wrong, and indeed the various party structures that could have acted when they should have acted did not act on time.
Leadership failure.
And that is what we are saying.
You don't think they thought that was so baseless and such a useless piece of news that they didn't need to follow?
Well,
like Kuku said, cannot be bought.
I do not know what they thought, but I am a politician and I have my own views as a politician on what actually went on regarding those things.
Okay. And John again is asking so that you don't have party people feeling that they can come there and cause mayhem and get away with it. Are you not going to allow the police to do their job in this matter rather than wanting to settle matters?
It is not, it is not even a simple matter of deterrence. It is a matter that will bring a lot of speculation also to rest. Ata Kennedy has just accused Nana Addo of being the brain behind all these things, or it happening in his favor and him keeping quiet. Kennedy Japan jumps into the fray and talks about, in a very unparliamentary manner, so many things, pointing fingers at the former chief of staff and Dr. Anane as being the brain behind these things and all that. People are pointing, accusing fingers. The blame game is on. Wouldn't it serve our own purposes if we make an arrest today? There are video clips. People saw people there. They know them. Hajia Fati is still in front of the party office. Why can't she be arrested and questioned so that we get to the bottom of these matters and find out if indeed these were irate youth or they were people who have been sponsored by somebody to come and do what they did.
And one of our reporters who was there and captured this footage for us insists that it is true, it is fact, that people were wielding guns and that 2 people actually had blood stains on them.
Okay. Let me say that we ought to be very, very, very careful on the path that we have chosen, because violence, no single person has a monopoly over violence. I, for one, now, if you call me into any party meeting, I may have to come there with my own security, because you do not know which side now of the party. You think that Paul Afoko doesn't have supporters in NPP? Or Cabinet Japan, for that matter, does not have supporters in NPP who can also become irate youth? And when you think it is all cool and calm, and you are going to have your steering committee on Monday, or some National Executive Committee or National Council, or even when the Council of Elders were sitting, these people will also say, if you will not give Cabinet Japan and Paul Afoko space to operate, we will not allow you also to sit. So we ought to be very careful.
You are confirming the deep-seated feud in the party that Felix and John referred to.
I preambled my statement by saying that I was appealing.
To make a point.
Yes, I was appealing to all the feuding groups. Remember when I started? Clearly, these are groups which are feuding. And look, I'm not one to live in pretenses and play the ostrich. If your mother is dead and you say she is asleep, it will get to the evening and hunger will kill you.
Yes, quick.
You know what? That is what I said was mutually assured destruction. Mad. But let's look at the specifics, the ingredients. Interestingly, your reporter, as you said, his eyes captured guns, but the cameras did not. I found that a significant interest. Oh, my own newspaper put it out there. Big headline. Machetes on display, bloodletting here and there. Yeah. So I'm not, and I'm only saying it's a significant observation I am making, that the eyes captured the guns, but the camera did not. Well, now, importantly, there was a confrontation. You see, what I find interesting is this. When I listened to Nohini Nto, I got the impression that before the press conference, the day before, the party leaders had heard rumors and things about possible attack. What was the responsible thing to do? The police ought to have been invited. The police was not invited before the press conference. They were invited in during the chaos. Now, my own investigations indicate the two sides that were fighting. Who were they? They all party people. Now, there was a group that had already had access into the party yard. In one of the cars that was part of the convoy that the general secretary and the chairman came with. That's a fact. Now, who were those people? Were they part of the party security? Obviously, the leadership, that is the chairman and general secretary, appear not to trust the party security. Those were the security chaps who were being changed. But apparently it didn't. Oh, he said so?
Yeah, he said so.
Yes, but they were not changed. Eventually, apparently that exercise didn't happen. Well, I didn't know till last night. I'll be honest with you. I thought they were changed. So I was a bit confused till I did some investigations and realized that it is the same security network that is there. So they were not changed. So obviously then, and I'm told that whilst the general secretary was out of that jurisdiction, it was even difficult for some of his lieutenants to get access to his office because the security guys appear to be biased. These are legitimate issues. So he obviously then came in with his own contingent of bodyguards. I was thinking that once you are afraid of something, you fear for your life, and that's human. You ought to call in the police to come and give protection to the press conference, even if you want to hold a press conference. You don't mobilize your own independent bodyguards to bring them in there. The other side also brings some people, obviously. Fati's name, I know Fati very well. I've known her for years. Well, whether she's a Akufo-Addo loyalist or not, you can put it that way. I don't put it that way. She is somebody who is an elderly person, and if she's been seen to have in fact created any infraction of the law, I think she could be invited.
What exactly does she do?
Oh, she's a party, quote-unquote, she's a de facto activist. But I'm told she says she sells things around the party.
She's a businesswoman.
Yes, but she's somebody I've known for over 2 decades.
Okay.
We were demonstrating with her with AFC, MFJ, all those things. She's been part and parcel of the street action that we undertook all these years to restore democracy and to consolidate democracy. That doesn't mean that if you err, the law should spare you. So I'm not out there to excuse her for whatever misconduct she may have put up.
Right.
But the point I am making, you know...
The law is protecting some people who messed up the country.
No, but I have called... Oh, okay. That's another subject. I nearly missed that. I nearly missed that. You see,
he was going into defensive mode. So you're going into defensive mode.
Sorry, gentlemen.
But let me make a last point. And I want the NPP chaps to understand this. See, let's assume without admitting there's an attempt to take control and command of the party headquarters. Look, that will have no serious impact because there's a linkage, as our brothers from the NDC did, about the control and command situation in the party and the primaries. There is no way, looking at the chemistry of the party today and the dynamics, that even if a certain faction took control and command of the party headquarters, that would translate in terms of the mathematical outcome of the presidential primaries. It's needless to fight over that. That's my own view.
Well, when things appear to have been dying down, I think this is the other part that stoked, the fire. Arthur Kennedy's letter, and part of it, he says, we must call out those who are behind the disturbances. It is obvious upon careful reflection that these hooligans from Kufuor's house through Tamale, you remember Kufuor's house, he was prevented from going for President Mohammed's inauguration, through Tamale to the party headquarters, are being organized, encouraged, inspired, and motivated by or on behalf of the 2012 presidential candidate, Nana Addo Akufo-Addo. And he goes on to appeal to Nana Akufo-Addo himself to step in to, dissociate himself from some of these things. He was interviewed subsequently, and he said he has no doubt that for as long as he was the major beneficiary of it, he's the one behind it. What he has not been able to do is to provide any shred of evidence to link Nana Addo directly to them.
To me?
Yes, Goku.
Well, he says he was doing logical deduction and commonsensical analysis. That is short of anything of evidential value. But he's entitled to make that analysis he did, except that no police investigator will proceed on that basis. Okay? Those who were out there in the field and who fortunately have been captured on video are those who are the first targets. If they subsequently, through interrogation and investigation, point to telltales that will lead to Akufo-Addo or anybody else, fair deal. But otherwise, right now, there isn't much to rely on except to say that Mr. Kennedy, Dr. Kennedy is entitled to his opinion. But that's the point I've just made. Akufo-Addo cannot be a beneficiary of the destruction of the corporate entity of the NPP. It is the party machinery that will be going to the election. Okay? He will be a party flag bearer. If that particular entity is destroyed in terms of its integrity and electoral credentials, Akufo-Addo cannot be a beneficiary. Indeed, he will be a victim, he will be a loser. That is my own view. And the Akufo-Addo I have known for, it's getting to about 4 decades. 4 decades, if not more, from the 70s, mid-70s. There's not an occasion that I have heard or seen him preach violence.
I see.
Well,
and I say so with authority.
I'm completely surprised by Kweku's analysis. In 2011,
but why are you guys...
He made all that we die a campaign. The call for violence was
something
that he promoted. He urged party youth to
but you see,
that
you've allowed this disruption.
No, naturally, we get
He actually
commended
party youth for engaging in violence at Itiwa. When you say Itiwa, you are only commending them.
We must win at all costs.
My reporters, but you see, this is unfair. This is disruptive.
Hold on.
My reporters were on the field at Itiwa. There were NDC foot soldiers out there on rampage. And they were resisting. Hold on.
The response
hold on. No, that is your interpretation.
No, you started to engage in violence.
This is unfair.
Hold on.
My reporters were on the field. People who they had brought from the north were on rampage.
Gentlemen, whatever happened in Atiwa is different from Nana Addo preaching violence.
Hold on. If we were to do an analysis of violence, of political parties, which I am not tempted to do.
But
because it will divert.
If you continue this way, you're spoiling the show. Don't do that.
Oh, but just hold on. I don't think that.
I am saying Itiwa yechire will be kakra. What it meant was that Itiwa resisted.
But that is violence.
He's preaching violence.
You just spoke about
counter-violence.
You just spoke about calling the police to deal with miscreants.
The police were called into Itiwa, and at once they done voting. Go and ask them voting.
Calling on the supporters to engage in
But this is unfair.
Okay.
Now, hold on there.
I just know the clarification from Felix.
If I'm sitting here and you start attacking me now, you mean I should sit here?
No, but I dispute the claim.
Don't try that one.
I've noted it. There were people who were beaten and were sent to the hospital and admitted. There were MPP activists who were admitted in the hospital. Were hospitalized.
Thank you.
But you know, I wasn't allowed to be
That is violence.
Please.
I've noted it.
Okay. We're talking violence. The culture of violence
reacted to him.
That is violence.
To Mr. Kennedy. And part of the reaction was this, that, and I'm quoting part of the statement. We find this statement a preposterous lie, motivated by nothing but pure malice against a man who brought him out of political obscurity to become Director of Communications of the NPP's 2008 presidential campaign. His reflection is totally unfounded and baseless. We have observed a level of predictability and persistence in many of Dr. Kennedy's writings attacking the personality of Nana Akufo-Addo. While he is entitled to his opinion on Nana Akufo-Addo, Dr. Kennedy is not entitled to manufacture his own false set of facts in pursuit of his hate campaign against Nana Akufo-Addo. Again, revealing that things are not well with the party. Dr. Kennedy is being pointed out as a man who is full of malice for Nana Akufo-Addo and has been on a hate campaign.
I, again, would have wished that both of these two statements were not even thrown into the public domain in the first place. But as Kweku said, and I agree with him, I would be surprised if it emerged that any of those seeking to lead the MPP into elections 2016 is indeed behind these attacks or occurrences at the party headquarters. It will really surprise me. You have seen how happy Felix and John have been this morning.
We have
seen how they have sought to embellish the occurrence. If my information is right, deeply mourn what happened. If my information is right, mischief. What started because Hajia Fati alleged to have seen some guns in the vehicle of those security personnel who came with Kwabena Japan. Up till now, you yourself has said that you have not seen any guns in the video footage.
No gun was found in it.
So far, I'm yet to see anybody, apart from Hajia Fati's claims, if the allegation is right, that there were any guns. However, we've sat here and heard John changing it from double-barrel guns to Uzis to bazookas.
We should investigate.
I've told you one of our reporters who was there.
Yes.
And so they
insists that there were guns. And reports of the blood stains on two individuals.
Blood stains, it wasn't gun.
I am not disputing that there could have been blood stains. If you look at what we saw, the scaffold, even nail scratches could generate blood stains.
It is bloodletting nonetheless.
But I am not saying that is good, but I am using that to say that if you seek to lead the MPP, and indeed it turns out that you were responsible for this, and handing us over to the NDC to use this against the party come 2016, then I do not know your understanding.
You will be a loser.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I would not.
So now to wrap up, you're saying the way forward is to have the NEC or the Council of Elders. They are meeting on Monday, is that it?
That is the steering committee.
The steering committee, and that should resolve all of these problems.
I am hoping that we would find a way forward. But let me also use this opportunity to appeal to all well-meaning MPP party faithfuls, be they elected officials or ordinary party folks, to exercise restraint in what is happening. Because in a mad here, I'm talking of a mutually assured destruction situation, nobody would ever emerge as the winner. The party would be a total loser. So in our public utterances, in our public discourse, let us try as much as possible to state our position on issues without malice, without rancor, without so much emotion, by understanding that at the end of the day, we have a common interest.
Thank you. I'm going to read to you a letter. I'm going to read to you a letter which I I suspect, should be able to bring some clarity on the authority, the lines of authority as regards what has brought about all of this brouhaha. And this is a letter that was written on the 18th of February 2009. It's titled, it's on the NPP's letterhead. Yeah. It's titled Appointment as Deputy Director of Communications, New Patriotic Party. And this is directed to Mr. Curtis Perry Kobla Okujeto. And it says, by the party's National Executive Committee's decision of January 2009, the key thing to look for is that it begins by saying, by the party's National Executive Committee's decision of January 2009, you are hereby appointed as the party's Deputy Communications Director. And then goes on to talk about the job description and everything. This was a letter written and signed by Nana Ohene Into, General Secretary then.
Voila.
Management staff.
No. Voila.
No, management staff.
No, there was a reference to a National Executive Committee decision.
Yeah.
I think that
that is voila.
We are yelling for
No, you could
continue.
So
I'm trying to align this. I'm trying to align what you read with what is before you. You mean if somebody wants to ask Perry to proceed to go on leave, he must now go to National Executive Committee?
That's the portion.
No,
that's the question.
Let's put it this way.
This letter says
first of
the
all,
authority to appoint him.
Let's put it this way.
Emanating from the...
He had not requested to go on leave.
Yes.
Two, he's to be reassigned when he finishes his leave. There's an element of appointment in there.
Yes.
All this meant that you just go by the tone of this letter.
Yes.
What is wrong? How long did it take you?
Is he
going to the National Executive?
Okay,
I cannot understand. When you read, just a moment, when you read the NPP's constitution, the second leg of it, where you talked about what the, if you could just read it, what the General Secretary...
Yes, that's why I said there's a conflict. His interpretation flies in the face of what had happened in January 2009.
So are you saying that if the NEC appoints somebody as a deputy communications director of the party, and the General Secretary is reorganizing the place, he's appointing more deputies. Remember that John Boadu and others were all deputy communication directors of the party. They've become national officers now. There are vacancies there. The General Secretary says, I want to reassign you. Reassignment here meaning that, and I am aware that in a meeting he told him, when you come back from leave, you'll be assigned to take over social media. Still as a deputy director of communications.
It's an appointment.
Something.
No,
it's an appointment.
You are already a deputy director of communications. Your job schedule is determined by the one you
want. Referring this
as a deputy is the minister who assigns me responsibility. I've been appointed as deputy by the president. That is the minister.
I want please let me direct first. Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
No. It's not your turn. just hold on.
No, I just draw your attention.
Separation of authority.
The rules for this program are quite clear.
I'm going to a quick break. I'm giving you 2 minutes of any reaction you want to make, and same to you.
Why would you
don't determine how long you speak.
I know that.
But fairness,
go ahead. Just go ahead.
Something.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier on, any pretense that this conflagration resulted from the decision to ask Perry Okujeto to proceed on leave will be misleading. The problem is much bigger than that. And
so
again,
say something new. You're
I'm
looking
saying
for the
something.
time.
I'm coming to discuss Atta Kennedy's letter. You see, Atta Kennedy, in my view, spoke the inconvenient truth. Because Nana Addo is the biggest beneficiary of any effort to undermine the Polafoko Kwabena Japan regime. And everything that has happened since 2012 testifies that...
I don't know if that is true.
Well, that is true. Why? First of all, there has been a massive...
Let me tell you this. I'm giving you information.
No, sorry.
Nana Addo, I agree with Kweku that Polafoko Kwabena Japan cannot stop Nana Addo from winning the primaries. But he is also miscalculating and is overestimating the impact that these two people will have on the results of the primaries.
He issued a statement and condemned the action.
He did not condemn it. That statement did not condemn it. That statement simply decried. They said
what else did you want to say?
No. There's a difference between condemning a statement and saying that let us not do this. His statement was too mild, in my view. For somebody who we are told is so against violence, the statement would have been much stronger. Again, it is not true that Nana Addo has not encouraged the use of violence as a means of pursuing political power. He urged party youth to resort to violence if they feel that that is what will get them power, because the opponent may use that tactic. But what does all that be die mean? When you say all that be die, and you encourage party youth who engage in violence and indicate that that is the way to go, and that you have the capacity to unleash violence if it becomes necessary. You cannot be said to be a lover of peace.
No, hold on,
again. All those people who engage in this attack, it's a known Akufo-Addo aficionado.
Okay, that's a point of reference.
It is known. Nobody can dispute that. Again, those who went to the party headquarters to do this, what was their motivation? They perceived Kabila Japon and Polafoko as posing a threat to Nana Addo because they want to remove persons in the headquarters who are favorable to Nana Addo's cause.
Okay.
Therefore, let us not pretend that
let's hear John.
Arthur Kennedy has said anything out of the ordinary. Indeed, when party youth went to hold President Kufuor hostage in the South, when he wanted to attend President Mohammed's inauguration,
Arthur Kennedy has been asked to provide evidence. He's unable to provide any. He says he's just making
the
logical.
Analysis is visceral, but logically, logical
analysis.
John, let's hear you.
No, logical analysis.
Sorry, Fred. John, let's hear you.
Logical analysis.
I have six points to deal with. First of all, Honorable Parry, I did not say that bazookas were used.
Just be mindful, I'm giving you 2 minutes.
Thank you. I just said that there were reports of this, and we should spread.
There were reports.
Well, first of all, the challenge for me is the break in law and order in the party. You are going for primaries. The party comes out with guidelines. MPs are not supposed to declare. Party officials are not supposed to declare. They break that.
10 NDC regional chairmen did say.
No, they
even
did
though
not.
you had guidelines.
Please, they did not. They expressed confidence in the leadership of the president.
The candidate
can I, please, can I?
Sorry,
you understand?
Machetes were pulled.
2.
So we scaled that hurdle.
Please. So that was the initial cause of the problems. Break. You ask MPs, they say they don't care. They think that they support.
And Nana Addo tacitly endorses.
Now with the Arthur Kennedy issue, I do not really want to go deep into that, because following all that, there was a National Council of Elders meeting, and they issued the red line that look, all that is happening, bygones with bygones. Let's have a clean sheet. Post that directive yesterday, fire for fire, on several media platforms between Canada and Japan. Nana Hininto alleged that in Tamale, on OKFM yesterday in the morning, I listened to it.
I missed it.
That Alan Chamante's bodyguard was lifted in the air and floored in Tamale. That at a National Executive Council meeting, one of the members stood up and accused Polafoko, accused Kobina Japan of having an agenda against Nana Addo, and that they will kill them yesterday. So look, the problems are not over. Let them pretend.
And then behave as if
who was mentioned in the report that John is giving is suggesting that he's likely to take them to court.
Well, that is for them.
Understand.
That is for them.
John,
please, Samson. Please.
John, I'm sorry.
Just 1 minute.
No, I'm sorry.
To one.
That would not be 30 seconds.
You know.
Well, but that is what
just 30 seconds. Move on.
You shouldn't take it.
30 seconds. Yeah.
You know, one of the major problems facing the NPP is what I call political patronage. And you rightly said that I will not be surprised if Nana Addo wins this primaries. Indeed, he is miles ahead of the other candidates. People seeing that are taking advantage of it and doing all kinds of things.
In a bid to catch his eye.
In a bid to catch his eye. And that is what is injurious and dangerous to Nana Addo.
Funka games.
And as a leader,
no, but the outcome of the Funka games was quite clear.
You know, this is where we take a break.
There's a mantra.
This is where we take a break, and when we return, I'm going to ask my guests to take about 2 minutes each again to look at why or how unfair the game becomes when the UK Ireland branch releases the voting results that they claim of what should happen. And Nana Addo is miles ahead. He won a landslide and the rest. Now 3 of the candidates, the aspirants, are challenging that. They say that there couldn't have been an election without their knowledge. We'll be right back after this break.